Well, last night was a really interesting evening at the health department with the officials from the health department. We had the person that was on stage with us, which was great, Dr. Betts. I mean, he really was a trooper. I mean, he actually had said to us before we started the talk, we went up and introduced ourselves and said, thank you for coming, and we really like to have you. You know, we're really glad that you're willing to do this. And he said, well, nobody else really wanted to do it. And I said, well, why is that? He says, here's your opportunity. Here's your floor in terms of your opportunity to tell your whole side of the story. And he said, well, we've done things like this before and they haven't gone well. And I think it really did go well. I think that we had a very respectful audience. I think that we had an opportunity to have questions ahead of time that we had answered. Some of the questions were things like, do we really think that the H1N1 vaccine was really going to be the cause of the pandemic? And one of the things that I said was, well, I think that the flu mist has a risk because that's a live virus vaccine that's being going up everybody's nose, and that you can shed that virus for up to 21 days. But that I have personally a bigger concern about Tamiflu, and that I think that Tamiflu, and even in the scientific literature, talks about 16% of the viruses each year become resistant to Tamiflu. So if we start creating very resistant mutant viruses, and those mutant viruses get out into the environment and they're resistant, and they start to do this thing called reassortment and come together and create an even bigger vaccine, a bigger virus that is going to be even more of a problem. And they sort of agreed with that. One of the questions that got asked to me was, is there any evidence in the medical literature that vaccines have caused harm and problems? And I was really glad that that came to me because, you know, I spend most of my life researching the problems with vaccines, and I know that I've personally done more than 350 articles that have pulled looking at all the different problems with all of the different vaccines, particularly hepatitis B, the things with the flu shot, things with all the different vaccines that can cause problems. And they can cause problems by about 5 or 6 different mechanisms of action. So I think that there were 4 other health department officials that were there last night. They were sitting in the audience. And they were, you could tell by the looks on their face and sort of their body language that they weren't in much agreement when Dawn Richardson from Prove and I were doing sort of a back and forth. But they couldn't deny the fact that there was another whole side of this story. They couldn't deny the fact that we were telling them what the science and the research was. They darted and danced around a lot of the issues sometimes when people were asking them about mandates. They never did give really straight answers. And I think that Texas, at least from what they said last night, and I'm really glad that Alex, that people were there filming this, because they were saying in quite strong language that we're not going to see mandates in Texas. Flu shots will not be mandated in Texas. And I think that if there becomes a problem down the road with this flu shot shortage, and if they think it gets worse over the winter, and they start pulling this stuff about mandates, I hope that now you've got recording on footage that you can go back and challenge them on that, to saying that you are backing out on your word.
Just to jump in briefly, the problem is, as you know, they do this color of law. They tell parents, it's mandatory your children take the flu shot. They've been announcing all children must take it all over the country. And then they kick your child out saying they violated policy, and then trigger truancy laws. So they kick you out themselves, then they trigger the truancy provision, and then have a few examples of a couple parents they haul into court, and then the news announce parents have been arrested or parents have been charged for not vaccinating, when really the school knows they have that vaccine waiver exemption form. They never tell you, and engage in the crime of kicking your child out. It's like Governor Rick Perry 2 years ago says, it's mandatory, all girls in Texas must take Gardasil. Then federal vaccine liability protection kicks in. Merck knows in their own trials it killed and maimed people. Now nationwide they announce all girls must take it. But really, he just said it's a recommended through the health department that it be listed on the group that they say it's school policy you take. So they dance around this because with people that are ignorant, they come in and lie and say you must take these shots. I mean, I've read reports in mainstream news about parents having their children CPS'd, taken, or trying to take them for not taking hepatitis shots with a newborn baby. There's no law. How are they taking your children, saying it's neglect? Can you speak to that, how deceptive these people are?
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to think about that. I mean, when parents go to the hospitals and they're going to have their baby, I mean, I always say the place where you need to intercede, actually at the very beginning place where I think people need to intercede and investigate the vaccine issue, is when they're dating somebody. because at that point in time, you're probably talking about how your families get along. You're talking about religion and politics and money and living and jobs and careers. You really need to discuss the vaccination issue, because it may turn out that the one person in the party is totally against vaccines and the other person is totally for vaccines. Now, can you imagine getting married and bringing a child into that, and at that point in time having this huge contention? And I have testified in far too many court cases where one parent has tried to use vaccination as a child abuse issue against the other parent so that they don't have to pay child support.
That happened with Charlie Sheen. Denise, and I know you know Charlie, you've talked to him.
Yep.
Denise Richards, in the divorce, and then in trying to take him away so he couldn't see him,
Yep.
Said he believes 9/11 was an inside job, and he believes vaccines might hurt his girls, when it's on record that vaccines have damaged incredible amounts of people.
Absolutely. So I sort of tell people that before you go to the hospital to have a baby, you need to know what you want to do about the hepatitis B vaccine, the vitamin K shot, all of those things. But I think it really should start before that. And I actually have a friend in Cleveland who's a nurse midwife that she will not accept a client as a client unless both the mother and the father are in agreement about vaccination.
What's your view on the vitamin K?
I think that there are a lot of reasons to put that off. The vitamin K shot was actually put into play in the hospital ostensibly because of blood disorders and because of the very, very remote risk of bleeding that can happen in the brain if you don't have vitamin K on board. But vitamin K starts to be developed in the neonatal liver at about 7 days. And the vitamin K shot was also instituted because of circumcision. The circumcision was always done at 7 to 8 days. It was a Jewish tradition, and that they did it at 7 days. When they started doing the circumcision in the hospital on day 2 and 3, the baby hadn't already been producing enough vitamin K in their liver so that there would be bleeding. So
isn't it amazing that the rabbis knew thousands of years ago to do it on 7 days when they had blood clotting?
Exactly.
How did they know that?
I don't know how they knew that, but they did. I don't know. It was just a tradition. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, how do we know from years ago? I don't know how to answer that.
That's amazing. Let's get into Ukraine and also the adverse reaction reports. This Washington Redskins cheerleader, she went to Johns Hopkins, other facilities. They said, yes, you've gotten this neurological disorder. The FDA said, yes, this can happen. And then she went and got some treatments and is getting better. I know Dale Dudley, 93.7 talk show host, he took a flu shot and months later got numb in his hands and feet, started getting paralyzed, started having trouble walking. He went to a bunch of specialists and medical doctors said, you had a bad vaccine reaction. He got better. Now they're trying to say it's a hoax because she got better, but the FDA itself says, don't worry, if you do have a neurological problem, most of the time it gets better. But they're trying to have it both ways, saying, well, because Desiree is getting better, it must be fake. But then there's all these other reports where they're admitting it's causing neurological problems.
Yeah, it's always amazing, isn't it, that if you get sick and you haven't been vaccinated, it's because you weren't vaccinated. But if you had a vaccine and you have a bad reaction, it's never the vaccine. I mean, talk about having it both ways. And it's amazing that even though conventional medicine completely failed this woman and had nothing to offer her, and then she goes and finds a physician, who is actually Dr. Buttar is a friend of mine, and they went to his clinic and they find out that there's some things in an alternative medicine arena that can be done. And she starts to get better. Now, it was a hoax. She was misdiagnosed. It couldn't possibly work because their particular tools didn't work, means that there aren't any tools that work. That is very, very bad.
What does Dr. Buttar and others, because he helped Jenny McCarthy and many others, they're trying to, as Dr. Blaylock says, reduce the autoimmune inflammation. They're trying to chelate and remove the metals. What are these treatments?
I'm not exactly sure. I know that there's a lot of IV treatments that are involved, and I know it's a lot of what you said. I think there's a lot of IV vitamin C, probably glutathione, probably different types of things that pull the metals out of the body. But it's all about rebalancing the physiology and putting the right biochemistry in and interceding quickly so that you can stop those inflammatory molecules from causing damage.
And instead of them admitting vaccines are causing a lot of this and giving people treatments when they give their 18-month-old the third round of shots, they have a convulsion, never talk again, instead of rushing them in and saying, detox, detox, oh, no, it wasn't the shot, there's no treatment, you must have shaken your baby.
Yeah, and the other piece of that, they're always talking about how much the vaccine programs cost. There's a cost that has never really been analyzed, Alex, that I think is really important, and you've addressed it, is the fact that if you have a bad reaction and you go to the doctor's office, now what do? They put you through all of these tests, and I'll give you one quick example. For example, the hepatitis B vaccine that happens that they give babies in the hospital. One of the side effects right on the package insert is that babies can get reflux. They can get GERD. So now they start having GERD and maybe bad diarrhea. They take them to the pediatrician. What do? Upper GIs, lower GIs, endoscopy. They do CAT scans. They do all these different antibiotics, all these different things to this baby rather than going, oh, here it says right here on the package insert, this is a side effect, probably just a side effect of the vaccine. All of those costs, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of inconclusive tests, multiply that times thousands and thousands of patients. That is also a cost to the vaccine system, about vaccines.
Well, I've talked